Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Holly and it has been a couple of months actually since I have filmed anything for a couple reasons. One of them, it is April 2020, so if you're watching this currently, or if you've come back to it sometime later, you know of course we are smack dab in the middle of the global pandemic that is COVID-19, and we have been quarantined, my family and I, self-isolated really since mid-March, and as of this filming we have no idea when some of these restrictions will be lifted or when we will kind of be back to normal again. So for obvious reasons I didn't have a lot of hopeful, exciting, fun family travel videos to share with you. In fact, one of the reasons why it's taken so long to get back into filming something is because I've been going through kind of a little bit of some depression and just disappointment. Right now, as I'm filming this, we had planned to be at Walt Disney World for a 10-day trip to go through all the parks and meet up with my in-laws who are from Brazil. If you've seen the Brazil videos, we were going to meet up with them for the first time since October and do a big Walt Disney World trip. And then at the very end of the Disney trip, we were gonna go over to Port Canaveral and catch a Disney cruise to the Bahamas for 5 days, 4 nights. So we had this huge trip planned, and I've been just crushed that it got canceled. And I know in the kind of the midst of this global pandemic, family vacations are not they're small potatoes. They're nothing really to be too worried about. We've got other things going on, and people are losing loved ones. So that was clearly the bigger, focus. But it's also just been, and I'm sure many of you can relate, just very disappointing to have some of these plans, whether it was weddings. I've been so devastated to hear about people's weddings being canceled, graduations, proms, family vacations, folks that have lost a loved one that we're not able to actually give them a proper service or a proper funeral. These are all things that we can, even though we know it's for the greater good, we can still be disappointed about. So I've had time to process those feelings and kind of come through, and I would like to say that I'm completely on the other side, but I'm not yet. I'm still working on it. And one of the things that helps me is to verbally process. I love to have a good conversation and kind of talk out my feelings, and that has been also in short supply because a lot of the people that would be sounding boards for me have are isolated in different states or at their own homes. And so I thought, you know what, it's time to pull out this camera, and if for no other reason than my own mental health, talk about it a little bit with some of you. So I appreciate you joining me. It's still a pretty new channel, so if you have not had the opportunity to subscribe to my channel, I'd be super grateful for that. And obviously any comments or likes you leave on each video give me a big boost and just encourage me to keep creating content. So because I'm going through major Disney withdrawal, and I have been so disappointed to not have our our trip this April, I thought I would go ahead and make a series, a Disney series, answering some of the most common questions I get from friends and family as they are, thinking about Disney or preparing for Disney. We are mega Disney fans, and really, me especially, it's my hobby. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I don't have a lot of hobbies left. The kids have taken most of my time and my energy, but I still really enjoy planning our family vacations, and most of that revolves around Disney World. And so we go usually twice a year. Last year, 2019, we took the year off from Disney and decided to do family trips. So we went out to Colorado for Easter and to see my sister and her family. They live in a beautiful part of Colorado along the western slope, and I used to live there, so it was great to go back. And then we took a 2-week trip to Brazil, which I actually filmed some and did a series about, so be sure and check that out. My husband's family still lives in Brazil and are from Brazil, so it was good to see them as well. So those were important trips, but they were a full year off from Disney. So man, I was ready for this April trip because it had been since September of 2018, since we've been back in the park. So there was a ton of new stuff, Toy Story Land and Star Wars Land and new rides and new food, new restaurants. So we had a whole bunch of new stuff planned and I was just so excited about it. So, you know, the way that Disney works now is you really start planning your trip very, very far in advance. You can make dining reservations 180 days in advance, and then your fast pass reservations, depending on if you're on property or off property, 60 to 30 days before. So, you know, we had come February, I was in full excitement, countdown mode, and then we started getting some concerning, you know, watching the news was getting more and more concerning. It hadn't officially really hit here in the US yet, but it seemed like it might be a matter of time before it did. And so sure enough, here we are, April 2020, and the world has changed completely. So I can't speculate on what Disney will be doing, when they'll be reopening, or anything like that. I don't think anybody has the answers as of yet. Certainly as of this filming, there are no answers. It is closed indefinitely, and you know, what people are most concerned about once we do start to reopen are the large groups like concerts and amusement parks, and obviously that impacts Disney. So we'll just have to wait and see. But what I can answer and what I am excited to talk about are just some of our top, probably 5 most asked questions from family and friends when planning a Disney trip. And again, this will be a series, so I will be doing probably 5 questions, tackling 5 or so questions each video. And so this is just kind of like, I'm going to caption it like, why Disney? Because my husband and I traveled a lot to Disney before we even had kids, and often the question was like, why do you like Disney? Isn't that for kids? Why do you guys go so often? And so this question, I'll just answer it personally, because I'm sure everybody that's a Disney fan would have a few different reasons. I think namely for my husband and I, it's just, there's a lot of nostalgia involved with it. I grew up a Disney kid. My parents actually bought into the Disney Vacation Club timeshare, or the DVC membership, opening year. So back in the early 1990s. And we ended up then going every year for a big trip, sometimes more than once, but always at least once a year, and having this great family trips. It was just, you know, part of my very happy childhood memories that I love to go back and kind of remember, and walk down memory lane a little bit and go to some of these restaurants that I used to eat at with my family as a kid, and now I have kids. So it just hits me in all the right places for my love of memories and my fondness for the nostalgia of it. And my husband is the same. Like, surprisingly, coming from Brazil, he and his family would come every year to take a big family vacation themselves, and they also bought into a timeshare at Westgate. So they also had, you know, discounted lodging, and so it was something they liked to come and spend a couple of weeks in December, which was their, you know, kind of like their summer break in Brazil. And they loved the parks and the holidays, and they were always big fans of Mickey and Minnie and getting to see the characters. And so while we have very different upbringings and very different, you know, childhoods, being from different countries, Disney is our common ground. So we loved it. We ended up kind of not really talking about it a lot when we were dating in our early marriage. But then for our first year anniversary, I was a server at Red Robin, and he was going through grad school, and we had a jar, literally like a glass mason jar, and I would bring my tips home from the weekend shifts, and I would put all my tip money into this glass mason jar. And we had gotten a free week from his parents to use their timeshare. And so all the money that went into that tip jar for a handful of months was our spending money. And we drove down to Florida and had our first year, you know, anniversary trip in Orlando. And it was just like we saw parts of each other that we were not really, you know, had not really discovered yet, that we both loved it so much, that we both got so, you know, just kind of emotional going into the Magic Kingdom. And we had all these memories that would come up, and he was like, oh, we used to do this with my family, and we always got popcorn and watched the parades. And I was like, oh, we always did Splash Mountain. I swear I can still hear my dad laugh when we go down. And so it was just this cool trip that we kind of realized that we had this shared love for Disney, and knew that it would be something we could continue to do in as a new family. So I guess that's the main reason for us why Disney is just that nostalgia piece, the memories, and then now that we have children, it kind of just hammers it home much more that, you know, potentially our children will have these strong, vivid memories for their future memory bank, you know, as they get older and leave the nest and start their own families. And so it's just a way that we kind of keep touchstones to the past, but also, you know, keep a foot forward into the future and making memories with our family. The second probably biggest question that most people have when they're starting to plan a Disney trip and they realize how often we go is, how can you afford it? And it's an honest question because Disney can be quite pricey. Tickets alone can be upwards of $110, $120 per person per day, and that's just to get into the parks. That's not to get down there. It's not the transportation piece. It's not the food, which can be pricey. I mean, you're talking like $12, $13 burgers. And that's not including a beverage, where you've got kid meals. I think the last time we were there, I saw an Uncrustable sandwich meal on the kids menu that was going for $9. So, you know, it's a fair question. How can you afford Disney? And I'll give you just 3 of ours. And the main one is that we have very, very little debt. My husband was pretty strict with that early in our marriage. In fact, I came to our marriage with more debt, significantly more than he had. And so part of, you know, our process as we were getting married was not having this massive, huge wedding, but having a more reasonable wedding and using a lot of the extra money that we were making at the time to pay off my debt. And so we did that. And then we've been very careful as we've been married not to have a lot of credit card debt. We drive pretty old cars. In fact, the other day we were joking because I called our Toyota Camry, you know, the new car, and my husband was like, we need to stop calling it the new car. It's like 7 years old at this point, but it is new compared to our other car, which is quite old, and most people can't believe we're still driving around. It's a complete beater, but it passes inspection every year and the wheels haven't fallen off, so we just keep driving it. So we have low debt, we have no car payments. Pretty much our only debt is our mortgage payment, and then we became DVC members and we financed, so we have a small $150 a month payment, and that kind of goes towards, we consider it almost like prepaying for our Disney trips. But that's pretty much the only debt that we have. So we budget for our trips. We set you know, kind of like a yearly budget for vacations and things, and Disney trips get a line item on that budget, so we are prepared when they come up. Every family will have different priorities, and that's absolutely okay because every family is different. But for us, it was just part of why, you know, what we could do to make more family memories and take more family trips, and it was just, you know, kind of living simply. I would also say that when you're in the parks, there's a whole way to go completely big and to spend and spend and spend and buy the dining plan and get all the souvenirs and stay at the ritziest resorts. And there's a completely different way to do Disney, which is to stay off property and to, you know, maybe eat one meal a day in the parks and then bring snacks or just have, you know, small kind of mini meals. And to, I've, you know, seen videos where people bring souvenirs from Walmart and the dollar store to give to their kids in lieu of a, you know, a $20 plush toy at Disney. So there are completely different ways to do Disney, and depending on our budget, we kind of fall usually somewhere in between those 2 points. Another question I get a lot, because my husband and I like to travel to Disney as kids, obviously with our families, and then we traveled as, you know, a young kind of like newly married couple without kids. And now the last 3 times we've gone with either our babies or our children as they've grown. And they ask, how is it different? Oh, how is it not different? Like, everything is different about it now. Just the timing factor, what you can get accomplished in a day is different. We used to be one of those people that we would go into the parks and we would get a map and just like work our way through each land, doing every attraction and every show. We had Fast Pass down to a T. I mean, we were getting fast passes right and left. We would take, 180 days in advance, we would make our reservations for some of these, kind of exclusive restaurants that we had wanted to try, and we would sit and relax and have a drink and each get an appetizer and just take our time and rest. And then of course we would not miss a nightly fireworks show. So that's what we used to do. And now I'm sure all the parents out there on the other side are laughing along with me, because we'd be lucky if we get 5 attractions done in a day with our kids. Now, they are getting older, and every time we go, I feel like I learn more. The first time we went with my son, who is, like I said, almost 4 now, he was 7, 8 months, was his first trip. And so we got all of the cutesy photos of his first time on Dumbo and his first time on It's a Small World. And then we came back again when I was very pregnant with Vivian, and Sawyer was about 19 months old. And we got different photos then. He was a lot more interactive, of course. 8 months, it's not very old to go to Disney World. He pretty much just chilled in the stroller. But he loved it. 18 months, he loved it. He really enjoyed, the teacups this time. He got his first little haircut at the Main Street barber shop, and it was just iconic. If I can put some of these photos in from our last couple trips with kids throughout the video so you can see, I will definitely include some of them, because they are some of my favorite memories. And it is absolutely true when people say, your kids, they won't remember it. And I understand what they're saying, because he will not remember these first couple trips. There is no way. He was 9 months and 18 months. There's just no way he's going to remember. But I have such great memories, and we talk about it and we show him the videos and the pictures, and it's kind of like he does remember it. He talks about going on Dumbo, and he talks about meeting Mickey. So yeah, he doesn't really remember it, but they're definitely in my memory bank to stay. And I think going forward, he will, as he gets older, these memories will build. So it took him when he was 18 months, and then we came back, like I said, in September of 2018, and Vivian was 5 months, so very little, and Sawyer was, 2.5-ish. And again, the difference between 18 and 19 months and 2.5 was just, it was a big jump. He loved it. He made great use of the resort pool and splash pad. We had to drag him away. He remembers like getting in and out of his stroller for some of the rides. So every time you take your kids, kids just grow and change so much. It's going to be a different experience. So I can give you tips and strategies, and maybe one day we'll do a whole video where we just talk about kids and Disney. My top tip is just to scale back that list of things that you would, you would say were must-dos before you had kids, and limit it to 5. Say, okay, today is a Magic Kingdom day. These are the 5 things we want to do. And I mean everything. I mean a meal, I mean a character meet and greet, I mean a ride, I mean a parade, like 5 things. And then if you get anything beyond that 5 done, especially with babies and toddlers, consider it a huge win. It is different with kids. It's still magical. In fact, maybe it's more magical just because you get to watch the world through their eyes. And as any parent who adores their kids will attest, there's some kind of special magic in watching your kids, the wonder and amazement and joy. Man, it's priceless. There's no going around it. It's a wonderful, magical experience, and you should take your kids. And one day when they are flown the coop, my husband and I will still be going back, just the 2 of us, on anniversary trips and getaways, and we will still love it because it's good for all ages. But kids definitely impact it, and they should, I suppose. They change everything. But another question, the 4th question we get a lot is, do you recommend off-property or on-property? And what they mean when they're asking that question is, do you stay at a Disney-owned resort, which is on the premise, on the property of Walt Disney World, the complex, or do you stay off-property? So the answer to the question, on-property or off-property, has so many other factors that I could probably talk for 20 minutes about it. But I would say the number one thing you need to really kind of focus in on is budget, because the price difference can be quite great. And then you want to think about, like, are you flying in? If you are flying in and you're staying off property, you will definitely need a rental car to get around. If you are flying and you're staying on Disney property, you can comfortably and very conveniently just use Disney transportation. So that's something to consider. And that can save you, several hundred, sometimes up to $600 a week. You could save upwards of $600 to $700 a week just in a rental car, especially if you've got a larger family. So some of those costs are kind of like hidden costs in staying off property. You'll certainly save money if you have a rental car and you can go get your own groceries, as opposed to buying groceries on the little, mini mart they usually have on Disney properties. The groceries will be cheaper off property. So will the restaurants, so if you frequently want to, go to nice sit down restaurants, you will find without a doubt that off property, the prices at like the local Olive Garden or Red Lobster will be less expensive than the Disney restaurants. And so there are ways to save money with a rental car, to kind of like recoup some of the cost of having a rental car. We certainly like having our own vehicle now, especially with kids, because sometimes they are just melting down and there's no way around it. You're going to have to leave the parks, and it's not as convenient to try to like rely on Disney transportation during those times. Also, because we usually stay in the villas, which have a kitchen, we often want to do our own grocery shopping, and now even more with kids. And so again, it's great to have our own vehicle for that. So I can't say I like it both. I would say if you're on a budget, off property is the way to go, and you're driving and you're bringing your own vehicle, absolutely, you don't have to worry about a rental car. But if you're flying in, I would consider really crunching those numbers and looking. The final question, it kind of covers a lot of what I just gave you, was how frequently do we go? We go usually just a minimum of once a year. Sometimes we can squeeze in 2 trips. It affords us with at least 1 trip a year. If we borrow or bank from the previous year, we have more points to play with. Sometimes we can squeeze out 2 on-property stays, especially if we're traveling in the off-season and staying in a studio unit instead of a 1-bedroom unit. Our points go much further. And then my husband's family living in Brazil, they don't make it back here to the States as frequently as they used to and stay at their timeshare. So every other year or so, we usually get a week from his parents' timeshare to use. And I love it because the kids change so much, especially at these young ages. So like I said earlier, my son, from the very first time he went as a small baby to now the next time he'll go, he'll be 4.5. It's such a huge difference, and his excitement and his involvement and his understanding and his interest in it has changed greatly. So it's just fun to see and kind of mark time looking back over family photos and be like, wow, I cannot believe they were that little. Look how much they've grown. So again, I'm a big sap when it comes to like memories, and very nostalgic person. So that's probably a little bit of me. So those were my 5 questions. If you have any additional questions that I didn't cover, leave that in the comments, because I said this is going to be a series where I'm going to be answering 5 or so questions each video, most common Disney questions. I think moving forward, I'm going to tackle each park, and then I may do a video on our Disney Vacation Club membership, especially because that can often be confusing for people that are not familiar with it or are kind of outside the Disney bubble. So happy to answer any questions that I get. So leave me a comment if you could. And just stay positive, folks. If you're watching this live and COVID-19, it is very difficult. There's a lot of things to be disappointed about, but just keep your chin up, keep remembering, the good times that you've had and the good times that will be to come, because we know we'll get through this. And it may take a while to feel normal again, but life will, resume some normalcy, and we'll hopefully be stronger for it, more grateful for it, and less, I think maybe just take less for granted and be more in the moment. Those are certainly some of the hopes that I'm bringing forward out of this, and it is my hope for you and your family as well. So have a wonderful day. Again, thank you so much for listening. Thanks for letting me take this time to verbally process to you. I'd love to hear any of your feedback below, and we will talk soon. Bye-bye.